Hey guys, Lorenzo here, producer and songwriter from London, and in this video I really want to show you some handy mixing tips, how I go about mixing a track. So here's a track which I wrote with a London singer-songwriter called George Walkwell. You'll actually see in other videos we built this track up from just being an acoustic song into a full production. We added drums, we added bass, some chords, some lead parts, so check those videos out if you're interested in learning about that. But right now let's go through the song as it sounds at the moment.
Truth, don't keep me waiting. Something isn't right, your hesitating. What will it take for you to tell me why? I'm going out of my mind.
Cool. The reason I had the meter here was just to show you the peak. When I'm listening back through the track, I want to make sure that the peak doesn't reach anywhere above sort of -5. That's to ensure that when we bounce it down there's enough headroom for mastering. So if you do see that something just jumps, you need to just find the track that's causing that and then either reduce the gain or add a compressor or add a limiter or that kind of thing. Right, so let's get started with the mixing process. The first thing that I tend to do is I blend that relationship between the kick and the bass. Right, so let me just go ahead and solo the bass and the kicks. I'll start with all of the effects on. And then this is without any effects. Yeah, I'll quickly talk through some of the effects that I've got on the bass. A couple of EQs, nothing too surprising here. This is the bass EQ here. This EQ is a bit more interesting. It's just trying to bring out the, as you can see here, string noise and presence, just to help it cut through the mix a little bit more, especially on like mobile phones. But more interestingly, and the most, I think, really important thing is to side chain. So this side chain would be add the compressor onto the bass, and then you hit the side chain button, and then when you go to the kick, you send the kick to the side chain that you've just created there, which means that every time the kick pumps, then the compressor will be activated. I'll do it without first. Now let me add that side chain. So you can hear what they call ducking. The bass is ducking under the kick. That helps to make sure the kick does cut through in your mix. But specifically for me, I prefer to use a multi-band compressor because then you're not extremely cutting the bass from the whole mix. You're only cutting the frequencies of the bass that will interfere with the kick. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So this is the kick, and I've just put a frequency monitor basically here on the kick, right? So you can see that the frequencies of the kick is somewhere between 0 and 100, mostly around 50. So why would we want to get rid of all of the bass? Why not just get rid of that sort of frequency? That's what we're going to do. So we add the same thing as before. We just add a multi-band compressor instead of a generic compressor, and we select the frequency. So here you can see 20 to 150, 150 to 5 kilohertz, and blah blah blah. But I'm only caring here around, let's just say 0 to 150 to be sure, and I'm only adding the compressor on this lower part. So let's listen now how it sounds. So as you can see, the bass is still ducking, but you're not losing the bass at the same time. So let's compare that with the other compressor we added. This is the older generic compressor. And then the multi-band compressor. So it's great. And although you might still want the generic compressor just to give that, if you want that side chain effect, you know, you might want it that way. So, but yeah, for this song I prefer to have the bass coming through. Right, so before I forget, I did promise in another video that I'll show you what we did with the toms. As you can see, I've added so many effects here on the toms because I needed quite a lot of work. I'll show you the before and after, and then I'll talk through what I did. So this is before. And this is after. And let me just do that within context, within the track as well, so you can really hear. So this is before. And this is after. Let me talk through what I've done. The first thing I did was I I actually tuned the toms because they just didn't sound like they were in the right key, basically. So that sounds nice and in tune, whereas compare it to the older one. It just sounds a bit discordy. Then the next thing I did was I added a whole bunch of plugins, and first one being just a limiter, just to sort of give it that ceiling in terms of gain. Then EQ, get rid of some of the lows, accentuate some of the highs, similar to the bass actually. And then I added this cool plugin, which is just a stereoizer. Just gives it that extra width. So I'll just show you with and without that. Yeah, this is cool. I did a transient shaper, and this was just to stop so much of the trailing reverby kind of sound. So again, I'll show you before and after. It's before. And after. So it's just a little bit more snappy. Right, so moving on to vocals, and you could talk for hours about how to mix vocals, but in this video I'm just going to be really quick and just hit on the key points if I can. So I'll just show you the before and after.
Something isn't right, you're hesitating. What will it take for you to tell me why?
And now the after.
Waiting. Something isn't right, you're hesitating.
Cool, so as you can probably see here, for the inserts I've got a compressor to begin with, then a few EQs. With the EQ you just want to cut the lower end a bit like this, and you might want to add some extra high end as well to give it some shine, and then a tiny bit of reverb to begin with as well, just a 1% just to place the vocal. Also I'll show you on the main vocal group I've got de-esser as well. That just helps to get rid of the sibilants. I've got a whole bunch of sends as well, which is basically additional sound on top of the vocals, which I'll show you one by one here. So we've got reverb.
Waiting. Something isn't right, you're hesitating.
Just standard reverb. Then I've got a delay.
Waiting. Something isn't right, you're hesitating.
And with the delay I've also automated it, so at certain points you'll hear more of the delay than others. I think coming up here you'll see it coming up.
Will it take for you to tell me why? I'm going.
It's quite cool. I've also got distortion.
Something isn't right, you're hesitating. What will it take for you to tell me?
But yeah, obviously not that much. And the other thing that I sometimes add, it depends on the vocalist and everything, but in this case I wanted to add an octave higher. So I just put some pitch shifter, did an octave higher, and you just have a listen. It just gives it a little bit more thickness, I think.
Something isn't right, you're hesitating. What will it take for you to tell me why?
And in a similar way where I've done the octave, I might even add more harmonies as well. So either I could generate harmonies or just sing them myself and blend it in with the mix. Another really handy tip I want to show you quickly is very similar way that we sidechained the bass and the kick drum together. I like to sidechain the vocals and the instrumental stuff together. I'll show you what I mean. I'll do it very quickly. We've got a compressor on the instrument group. So just have a listen to the instrument group on its own. And then I'm just going to do it so you can hear it really clearly and see what happens when the vocals come in.
What will it take for you to tell me why? I'm going out of my mind.
So as the vocals start singing, then the instrument sort of drops down in volume. Obviously you don't want it to be as extreme as that, but the good thing about doing this is that at least then the vocals and the lyrics come out more clearly in the mix. So the final tip I want to leave you with is when you're mixing your track, try to at least to begin with do this in mono, not in stereo, because a lot of devices like mobile phones and laptop speakers, they will be in mono, and you want to make sure that your track sounds good on those devices. The other thing is make sure to do it at a low volume, not very high volume,
Because
if a song sounds really good when it's quiet, then it will sound amazing when it's loud. And the other thing you can do if you want to be really clever, which I do sometimes, is on the master output, I sometimes add an EQ, which is kind of equivalent of how a mobile phone frequency is. If you can imagine now, this is probably how the song will currently sound on the mobile phone. Yeah, so you just want to make sure it stands up in that sense. So as you can see, there's a lot more to mixing than just adjusting volumes. I hope it's been really useful and fun. I've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, just shoot across messages or comments, and yeah, please don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. I'd be much appreciated, and yeah, see you in the next one.